The moment she started watching the video, she knew she was not alone. In that dark reflection coming from the screen, it was as if someone was watching her. Although her breath caught, she couldn't tear her eyes away from the screen. Eliza Monroe was an independent content creator in her city with a small but loyal following. She loved tracking dark occurrences, investigating the stories of missing people, and researching mysterious internet phenomena. Her followers shared her videos with the nickname, "The Woman Who Sees the Unseen." For Eliza, this was more than a title. It was a way of life. While others slept at night, she would sit in front of her screen, navigating the internet's invisible corridors. But what she stumbled upon that night was unlike any mystery she had previously examined. A notification arrived on her phone around midnight. It read, "New recommended video," but there was no channel name or sender information in the alert. Curious, she opened the screen. In the middle of a black background, a single word was written in white: "Do not watch." Eliza frowned. The video had no likes, no comments, and not even a view count was visible. For someone who knew the limits of the YouTube algorithm, this was close to impossible. "Maybe I'm facing a new urban legend," she murmured. But there was a disquiet within her. This video was strange. After a brief hesitation, she placed the phone on the table and took a deep breath. "It's just a video," she told herself. "At worst, a silly prank or a virus." She touched the screen. When the image opened, the screen went completely dark. There was no music, no talking. Only a deep hum was audible, sounding like the noise of rushing quickly through a tunnel. For a while, nothing happened. Just as Eliza considered closing the screen, something appeared in the image. Slowly, a figure formed out of the darkness. It was not clear. A blurry, pixelated silhouette. The camera seemed to be approaching someone but couldn't focus. Then the image froze completely. A pair of eyes appeared in the middle of the screen. They weren't realistic, but they gave an eerie sense of watching. Eliza instinctively straightened up in her chair. She noticed her breathing. It had quickened. She put her hand to her heart, trying to smile. "Perfect, full-on horror project material," she said, half mockingly. But a cold shiver ran through her when she noticed her voice trembling. The eyes remained fixed on the screen for a few seconds. Then, suddenly, a text appeared. "Watch." This sentence set off all of Eliza's instincts. She tried to swipe the screen with her fingers, but the video could not be stopped. The back button, the power button. Nothing worked. The phone's brightness began to increase on its own. She had to squint her eyes. The light radiating from the screen reflected on her room's walls. The shadow of the dim desk lamp disappeared. Only the phone's cold, white light remained. At that moment, she noticed that even the posters and objects on the walls seemed to be moving within that white reflection. She tried to look away from the screen, but couldn't. It was as if the image drew her eyes like a magnet. In that split second when everything froze, a clicking sound came from the phone's camera. Eliza flinched. Her own face appeared on the screen, but something was wrong. Her eyes were too wide, too dark. The curve of her lips wasn't natural. It looked like she was forcing a smile. She dropped the phone. Her heart was pounding wildly. When the screen hit the floor, the video suddenly closed. Silence returned to the room. Only the ticking of the wall clock could be heard. Eliza took a deep breath, pushing her hair back. It must be a prank, she told herself. A virus, maybe a glitch. But a voice inside her rejected this explanation. Because those eyes, they were exactly her own. Eliza leaned back in her chair and tried to catch her breath. Silly pranks couldn't scare her. She had worked on much more chilling cases before. Clearly, one of her followers had sent this video to mock her. To prove to herself that she wasn't scared, she opened the video again. First, only pitch blackness appeared on the screen. Then, a hum, like a deep frequency from a distorted radio, was heard. The images suddenly began to change, a street lamp flickering at midnight, a silhouette appearing on a foggy cafe window, the headlights of a speeding vehicle, and finally, a foreign face briefly appearing for a split second. The face seemed to be looking directly at Eliza for a moment. Eliza's heart began to race. The video's duration was only a few seconds, but what she watched was burned into her mind. There seemed to be a kind of meaning hidden in every frame, as if a message was being conveyed. Then, she heard a sound. It wasn't coming from the phone speaker. A faint sound had emerged within the hum she'd just heard. "You watched too." The voice was so close that Eliza thought someone was in the room for a moment. At the end of the video, the screen went dark again. This time, white text appeared in the middle of the darkness. "You will be the next viewer." Eliza's throat tightened. Nonsense, she told herself. It was clearly a malicious prank or a strange algorithmic game. But within a few minutes, the notifications on her phone began to change. Messages with no discernible sender appeared. Applications opened on their own, and screen icons shifted places. In the gallery, there were photos she had never taken before. Blurry nighttime images. Some of them even showed Eliza's own house. Her curiosity wrestled with her fear. Her rational side told her to delete the video and move on, but the investigator's voice inside her once again said, "Watch it again." Finally, she couldn't resist. She opened the video again. This time, the images were different. An unfamiliar room appeared on the screen. A dimly lit, grey-walled, silent room. Someone was standing right in the middle of the room. Their face was not clear. It was blurry, merged with the darkness. But their movements, yes, she recognized those movements from somewhere. The way they tilted their head, the way they clasped their hands. It was Eliza's own body language. She leaned closer to the screen. Holding her breath, she focused. At that moment, the blurry figure's head slowly lifted and looked directly at the camera. A cold silence descended upon the room. The feeling that enveloped Eliza was undeniable now. She was being watched. That night, as Eliza tried to sleep, her mind wouldn't shut up. Even though she turned off the lights and put her phone in the farthest corner, when she closed her eyes, the dark screen reappeared before her. Her dreams were strangely intertwined with the images from the video. In the depth of the night, the silhouette reflected in a cafe window, the flickering light of a street lamp, and the unfamiliar face reappeared repeatedly. In her dream, she was walking in a corridor, but with every step, doors, mirrors, and paths became confused. One mirror would break, another would show not her own reflection, but the blurry figure from the video. The figure seemed to be repeating her movements with a slight delay. After a while, Eliza felt that this was not a dream, but a kind of reality. She had the same dream repeatedly. Every time she woke up, her throat was dry and her heart was racing. But the truly frightening thing was what she saw on her phone screen. Every time she woke up from sleep, the number of notifications had increased and new icons had appeared on the home screen. Applications she hadn't downloaded, messages from people she never followed, mysterious video links. All of them had the same word in the title: watch. Eliza tried to turn off the phone, but the device turned itself back on. Her own face appeared briefly on the screen, tired, worried, in front of a dark background. This wasn't a reflection. It seemed the camera had worked against her will at that moment. Eliza thought this might be a kind of virus. As the first light of morning filled the room, Eliza made a decision. She knew she could no longer understand this event alone. She grabbed her coffee and sat down at her computer, writing to small communities on social media to ask if others had experienced something similar. She received many more responses than she expected. People from different cities, even different countries, said they had seen the same video. Each of them had started experiencing strange things after watching it. Some reported hearing constant frequencies in their homes, while others described their own reflections in mirrors reacting slowly. A chilling fear enveloped Eliza. This was no longer just an internet legend or a dangerous virus. The video was connecting its viewers. It was as if they had become part of an invisible network. Eliza began to investigate more deeply. She video called a few of the people she'd communicated with. During one call, one of them suddenly froze. Only a blurry silhouette remained on the screen. After a brief silence, that familiar whisper was heard from the speaker. "You watched, too." At that moment, Eliza realized everything. The video was something strange that observed viewers, then turned them into a link in a chain. Every viewer was unknowingly creating a new viewer. Like a curse, it spread as it was watched and grew as it was viewed. The next morning, Eliza met with a few of her followers who lived in the city. All of them exhibited the same behaviors in different places. Someone standing in a corner held their phone at eye level, staring fixedly at the screen. Another stood in the middle of the street, murmuring meaningless numbers. 7, 3, 9, 1. They all looked different, but strangely they had the same rhythm. Their movements, their breathing, even their blinks were synchronized. This couldn't be a prank or a viral experiment. The video was influencing human behavior, directing their attention and awareness. It became stronger with every viewing, turning viewers into a type of broadcaster. And worst of all, people unknowingly maintained this cycle, spreading the curse by sharing the video with others. As the sun set, Eliza sat in her dark room. Her phone trembled once more. A new message appeared on the screen. Again, there was no sender. The message was short, sharp, and terrifying. "You now carry the curse. Keep watching or disappear." Eliza stared at the screen for a moment. Fear had been replaced by determination. Whoever was watching her, she had to find the origin of the video. Eliza took a deep breath, then turned the camera on herself. "If you're watching me," she whispered, "I'm watching you now too." The next morning, as Eliza walked through the city streets, she initially thought everything was normal. The sky was clear, people were going to work, and children were waiting for the school bus. However, a few minutes later, details that were too small to be immediately noticed but deeply unsettling caught her attention. People were acting strangely. A young woman sitting in a cafe looked at her phone screen for a long time without touching her coffee. Her eyes seemed to be unmoving, fixated on a single point. The man at the next table tapped the table rhythmically with his fingertips, like a metronome constantly working at the same pace. At first, she attributed this to tiredness or coincidence, but a few streets away, she saw 3 more people walking in the same rhythm. Their steps seemed to follow an invisible music. Did these people always behave this way? She hadn't noticed these strange behaviors until she watched the video. When she paused at a street corner, she saw that everyone's hands were moving in almost the same way. Some held their phones at chest level while walking, tilting their heads slightly to the side without looking at the screen. They would sometimes stop, stare at an empty spot, and then start moving again, as if they had received a command. She felt that these moments were not random. There was a kind of silent harmony within the crowd. Eliza's heart began to beat faster with her realizations. She watched people on the street for a while. The same behaviors kept repeating. Everyone looked different but carried the same rhythm. It was as if someone or something was synchronizing these people remotely. The video's effect couldn't be this widespread, she muttered to herself. When she returned home, she opened her computer. There was a notable surge of activity in her social media feed. No user was directly mentioning the video titled "Watch," but the same kind of short videos had begun to be shared. They all had a common feature: a few seconds of a black screen, followed by vague, rapidly changing images, a street lamp, a reflection, a blurry face. In the comments below the videos, people described strange things. I heard a hum after watching this video. It feels like someone is watching me. I saw the same frames in my dream last night. Eliza messaged a few content creators she knew. Did you see this video too? She asked. The replies were short and unsettling. Yes, but only for a moment. I don't remember the video, but the music is still in my ears. Strangely, I've been making the same movements lately. They all said the same thing. They had unknowingly become part of the video. Some said they had the same dream at night, while others couldn't exactly recall the moment they watched it. However, each admitted that their hands moved in a specific rhythm, and they sometimes froze in front of the screen without even realizing it. For Eliza, there was no room for doubt left. This was not an ordinary video, but a digital curse that was reshaping behavior. The images were affecting both the brain and motor reflexes. As people watched, they unknowingly repeated the same movements and then spread this behavior to others. Every viewer, unintentionally, formed the link for the next cycle. To prove this, Eliza started a small investigation. She prepared an anonymous survey via social media. Have you seen short videos with a black screen recently? If so, how did you feel? Did you have recurring images in your dreams? The answers began to arrive quickly. One user wrote, I hear a voice even when I'm awake at night, as if someone is whispering my name. Another said, I'm experiencing short-term memory loss. I can't remember some moments. Some added, my hands sometimes move on their own. Eliza organized the data into a table. Everything truly seemed like a chain. One person watches, then unknowingly affects another. It was clear that this situation couldn't be a coincidence. The video was infecting people digitally, like a virus, but its effect was manifest at a biological level. As night fell, Eliza sat on her couch exhausted. Her eyelids were heavy, but her mind was still racing. At that moment, her phone vibrated. A notification appeared on the screen. This time, only a message came. Keep watching, or you will disappear. Again, there was no sender, no username, no number, no link. The very existence of the message was unsettling in an unexplainable way. Eliza paused for a moment. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Fear rose in her veins, clashing with her curiosity. What did disappear mean? From the digital world or from reality? Now, it was about making a choice. Either she would keep watching and become a link in the chain, or she would find the video's origin and break it forever. Eliza lifted her head. City lights filtered through the window. The whisper was heard again. You watched too. This time, Eliza did not close her eyes, because she knew that if she didn't find the source of the darkness, one day she too would become one of the faces seen in the dreams of others. The next day, as Eliza opened her eyes on the couch where she had fallen asleep, the whisper still echoed in her head. You carry it too. As the first rays of the sun filled her room, she looked at the messages accumulated overnight. Notifications had increased. Some were deleted, and some contained half-finished sentences. It was as if someone or something had given up while typing a message. Eliza opened her computer and began to search for the video's initial source. She noticed that the footage was being reposted on different platforms, but all originated from the same account. That account had been opened recently. It had no posts, followers, or history. It only had one post, the video titled, Watch. When she looked closely at the profile picture, her heart raced. The image was just a grey smudge at first glance, but when she zoomed in, she realized it was the blurry silhouette of a key. The key's shape was disturbing. It resembled an eye. Eliza wanted to believe this was a simple spam account. However, the mere existence of this account had affected the behavior of people across the city. Such a coincidence was impossible. For several hours, she tried to examine the account's background. The IP address constantly changed, and the location never remained static. The account seemed to update itself, and sometimes even reshaped itself according to Eliza's search history. It could have been managed by artificial intelligence, but it worked strangely for a conventional algorithm. Eliza looked at the camera for a moment. She saw her own eyes in the reflection of the computer screen. What if I am part of this network now too? She thought. As the days passed, the oddities in the city increased. In the early morning, people gathered at specific points, repeating the same movements without saying anything. They had phones in their hands. The screens were dark, but their fingers seemed to be keeping an invisible rhythm. After a short while, everyone would disperse and return home, acting as if nothing had happened. When Eliza questioned them, no one remembered what they were doing. I'm just walking, they said. This state of unremembering was one of the curse's most potent aspects. People couldn't even question their own behavior. Eliza began documenting these oddities throughout the day. She took videos and notes. The same pattern was present in every recording. People moved according to a specific cycle. They gathered at certain places at specific times of the day, then dispersed. This behavior was directly proportional to the viewing frequency of the cursed video. The more people watched it, the more ritual participants emerged. At night, things became even darker. When Eliza now slept, her dreams began to merge with reality. The fast-paced images from the video, street lamps, mirrors, blurry faces, mixed with the spaces in her own life. While walking in her house corridor in her dream, the grey key from the video would suddenly appear on the wall. In the mirrors, she started seeing not her own reflection, but someone else, who was usually the face from the video. When she woke up, she found new messages on her phone. Someone was constantly sending the same threatening message to Eliza. You carry it too. Keep watching. These messages were not just frightening. Each implied that she had to move to the next phase. Eliza had now reached a definitive conclusion. Everyone who watched the video was unknowingly carrying the curse. This was neither a virus attack nor a social media spread horror trend. There was something deeper and more insidious, a curse that penetrated the level of consciousness, reprogramming behavior, thoughts, and even dreams. People unknowingly became a link in the chain, then shared the video, drawing someone else into the chain. Every viewer, even unintentionally, was enabling the spread of the curse. Despite the fear caused by this realization, Eliza did not back down. Fear did not restrict her movements. On the contrary, it increased her desire to find a solution. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "If this curse is really spreading, I have to stop it," she muttered to herself. Before taking action, she examined the city's digital map, following social networks and video interactions. The data provided clues about the curse's center. The analysis pointed to a specific location, the area where the video first spread and was most viewed, a massive data center in the city's old, abandoned industrial zone. Eliza formulated a detailed plan in her head. When night fell, she put her cameras, audio recorder, notebook, and a few spare batteries into her bag. She was going to set off in the darkness of the night, but the deep fear inside her had not diminished at all. Her phone had rung many times, and whispers had risen from the screen. All of them still echoed in her mind. A deep feeling constantly warned Eliza. This curse didn't only start with watching. It turned the viewers into reflectors, and every person spread the curse by drawing another into the cycle. People, unknowingly, reflected each other's behaviors and fears, and as the chain continued, the curse strengthened itself. Eliza had to accept this truth. Simply finding and deleting or destroying the video wouldn't be enough. The way to break the chain was to go to the source of the curse and stop it directly. As she walked down the empty street, the silhouette of the abandoned data center appeared on the horizon. The building hadn't been used for years. It stood eerily where it was, with rusty doors, broken windows, and dark entrance corridors. With every step, her heart raced, and Eliza struggled to control her breathing. She paused when she reached the front of the data center. Squinting her eyes, she detected movement inside the dark building. Her thoughts warned her, this is the center of the curse. When she stepped inside, a cold wind struck her face. There was no light inside, but the distant static and hum echoed from devices that were still running in the room. Her phone screen turned on by itself, and a message appeared. "Welcome, Eliza. Now keep watching." For a moment, she wanted to step back, but she knew there was no return now. With every step, the curse drew her further in, and the connection between the video and the city grew stronger. Eliza took a deep breath, preparing her camera and audio recorder. To break the curse, she had to move in both the physical and digital worlds. She had now become a central actor in the chain. Eliza, with trembling hands, turned on the camera, recording her steps, and whispered, "I will break the chain now." Eliza proceeded through the data center's dark corridors, recording. The dusty floor and rusty metal pipes created a humming echo with every step. The silence around her was suffocating, but the distant static and the low hum of computer fans made it feel as if the building hadn't been abandoned. Eliza also turned on her audio recorder. Her goal was to document the source of the curse and find a way to break the chain. As she progressed through the abandoned data center, Constantly changing images appeared on the computer screens in the office. City streets, people watching the video, and most frighteningly, an image of Eliza herself sitting in her room. The Eliza in the image looked at the camera with an uncontrollable smile. When she opened the door to a room, she found herself in the data center's massive server room. Eliza frantically tried to check the server cables and shut down the systems, but suddenly the screens went dark and all turned into a single image, her own face, which appeared like a giant mirror within the servers. The humming whisper filled the room again. "You watched. Now the chain is complete with you." Eliza tried everything to break the curse. She pulled cables, closed screens, and restarted the system. But every action only accelerated the curse's rhythm. The video had completely infiltrated her physical world. With every failed attempt, she had to watch the video from the beginning, and exactly what the entity that started the chain wanted was happening. The more people watched the video, the stronger the curse became. In desperation, she exited the data center. As she walked, hugging herself in the darkness of the night, the cold wind hit her tears. When she returned home, her room lights were flickering and the computer and phone were flashing on their own. The curse had completely taken over Eliza's life. The moment she stepped into her room, an image appeared on the screens, herself sitting in her house, but her eyes were completely darkened, and whispering words poured from her lips. "You watched. Now the chain is complete." Eliza frantically closed her phone and dismantled her computer, but there was no effect. She hadn't shared the video, but she had been forced to watch it repeatedly. The curse was now in every corner of the house. Mirrors, windows, and even wall clocks were moving on their own, surrounding Eliza with whispering voices from the screen. Now, not only the people in the city, but she too had become a part of the chain. She sat shivering in her room throughout the night. It had begun to reach her subconscious, directly through the phone, computer, and mirrors. Her dreams had now completely merged with the video. Eliza's movements, breathing, and even blinking were copied by the video and reached the other people in the chain. Eliza barely slept that night. Though her eyelids were heavy, her mind was awake. She had tightly closed her curtains. The only sound from outside was the wind's hum. Despite this, her room was not completely dark. The phone screen by her bedside illuminated the room with a faint light. She had silenced her phone and turned off the vibration, but the screen was flashing on and off at regular intervals. The light was pulsing like a heartbeat, briefly illuminating the room, then plunging it back into darkness. Eliza looked at the screen with tired eyes. No notification sound had come, but the screen seemed to be waking up on its own. She observed it for a while. The rhythm of the light was irregular. Its flickering light hit the walls, and the shadows on the wall seemed to be moving. Eliza couldn't resist. With trembling hands, she picked up the phone. When she opened the screen, only one sentence appeared: "Camera on." At that moment, her whole body tensed. Her heart leaped to her throat and her fingers went cold. Reflexively, she brought her hand in front of the camera. A shiver spread under her skin. Holding her breath, Eliza looked at the screen. There was a moment of blackness on the screen. Then the front camera opened. She saw herself in the image. But something was wrong. The face was hers, but her eyes, there was an oddity about them. Her pupils were abnormally dilated, almost covering the entire iris. Her gaze was fixed, blank, and empty. When Eliza encountered those eyes, she felt for a moment as if she had stepped out of her own body. The Eliza in that image was not blinking. She was just staring into space. Suddenly, the image disappeared. The screen went dark. Eliza dropped the phone. The device fell onto the carpet, but the screen turned on again by itself. This time there was no message, but she heard something from the darkness. It was a very faint but palpable sound of breathing. Someone was breathing in and out. Eliza drew back, leaning her back against the wall. Her breath was ragged. That thing is in my house, Eliza thought. After a while, she gathered her courage and picked up the phone again. The screen was dark, but when her fingers touched the screen, she felt a strange vibration. It resembled a heartbeat. It was as if something was living inside the screen. Eliza quickly tried to turn off the device, but the screen did not close. A rushed line appeared on the screen. Do not look away. Eliza fell asleep with the phone in her hand. When morning came, the city felt as if it had woken up from a dream, but was still under its influence. The sky was grey and the streets were silent. But even in this silence, there was something unsettling. As people walked outside, they passed each other without colliding, carrying no expression on their faces. Some in the cafes were staring at a fixed point, while others at the bus stops were looking at their phones as if waiting for an invisible sign. As Eliza watched them, an indescribable fear enveloped her. Now everyone was moving in the same rhythm. Steps, glances, even breaths were the same. Eliza couldn't take it anymore. Whatever it took, she had to break this connection. As soon as she got home, she turned off her phone, unplugged her computer, and cut off the internet connection. Yet this silence didn't provide security either. The sounds echoing in the house were much clearer now. Even the ticking of the wall clock had changed. When she listened carefully, she noticed that those sounds had turned into a regular rhythm. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Watching. There was a hidden word between every beat. The clock was either warning her or trying to transmit a message. Eliza held her breath, but the sound didn't stop. On the contrary, it became more distinct. It was like a whisper coming from behind the wall. Suddenly, one of the mirrors in the room fogged up. Yet, there was no reason for the glass to fog. Eliza slowly approached the mirror. When she touched the foggy glass with her hand, she realized that a hand from inside was making the same movement. Someone was breathing behind the glass. Eliza drew back, but letters began to appear within the fog. First, vague lines, then slowly legible words. You shared too. Eliza's knees buckled. Her heart felt like it would burst out of her ribs. No, she whispered, I didn't share it. But deep down, she knew that just watching was enough to start that chain. The more she tried to break the curse, the stronger it seemed to become. It was as if the system was marking everyone who tried to stop it, turning them into a link in the chain. She frantically ran to the table. She opened her old laptop. She knew it shouldn't be connected to the internet, but there was no other option. She had examined the account where the video first spread, and the link was still saved in her browser history. With trembling hands, she clicked the link. The screen first went completely white for a moment, then completely black. The computer fan began to spin rapidly. Then the screen turned on by itself and automatically started playing a video. Eliza's throat tightened because the person in the video was her. It was impossible not to recognize herself. The same hair, the same room, the same wall. But she had never filmed that video. The Eliza on the screen was sitting in a chair. She looked directly at the camera, wearing a blank expression. Her eyes were dark, but they occasionally sparkled. Then she slowly began to smile. That smile was not a human smile. Then her lips moved. You watched. Now it's your turn. At that moment, the small green light on the computer's camera turned on. Eliza frantically pulled the cable, trying to shut down the device, but it was useless. The computer didn't shut down. The screen turned black, but she could still see her own face in that darkness. But that reflection continued to move. While Eliza's hand remained still, the her on the screen tilted its head and moved even closer to the camera. A clicking sound was heard at that moment. She realized that the computer had started recording on its own. The file name read, "Continue." And in the corner of the screen, a red dot indicating the recording time was blinking. Eliza looked at the dark reflection on the monitor. Her own voice echoed, but her lips had not moved. "It's your turn, Eliza." Eliza stayed awake all night. She had closed her computer screen, covered all the mirrors in the room, and taken out the batteries from the clocks. She had isolated herself from everything, swaying in her place, waiting for morning. When she approached the window, the scene she saw outside gave her goosebumps. The people walking in the street seemed detached from their own will. Everyone was completely fixated on their phones, their heads tilted slightly to the side, focused on an empty spot. No one was aware. No one was in contact with the real world. Eliza was caught in the middle of a puppet show. People were tied with invisible strings, and their movements followed an order. Eliza still refused to be part of this order. If necessary, she would isolate herself from everyone and everything. Just then, her phone rang. The caller was not visible on the screen. Hesitantly, she opened her phone. A video suddenly appeared. This time, the image showed a revolving chair spinning in a dark room. Her own silhouette was sitting on the chair. Eliza's heart went cold, and her hands trembled. The Eliza on the chair looked directly at the camera. Her lips slowly moved, and she said a single word: "Watch me." The voice was not Eliza's, but it was disturbingly similar to her voice. Her heart rhythm sped up, and her ears were ringing. Small lines and trembling symbols began to appear around the screen. Even when she pressed the power button, the phone continued to flash. The video suddenly changed. This time, only the inside of her room was visible. She was slowly looking at the mirror. However, there was no reflection in the mirror. The face opposite her was completely different. The eyes dark, the lips silently moving, and words were heard. Eliza's blood ran cold. "You shared too." Those words were like an accusation. Eliza drew back, her hands trembling. Her heart was pounding wildly. The more she tried to break the curse, the stronger the video became. It was as if the system marked everyone who tried to cleanse it, increasing its energy. Eliza was not alone in the room. A presence, shapeless but palpable, was moving around, copying her movements and making her feel its rhythm with every breath. Eliza paused for a moment. The phone was still lit. The image on the screen showed all corners of her room. Every detail was being recorded. Everything, every movement, every breath had become visible by the video. And that whisper was still there, silent but sharp. "You shared too." Eliza pressed the power button again, but the phone did not shut off. The screen continued to flash, defying her will. The flickering light intermittently illuminated the walls of her room, making the shadows move as if they were alive. Suddenly, the video changed. This time, only Eliza's room was visible on the screen. but the Eliza in the image had slowly turned to the mirror. Eliza also involuntarily turned her head and looked at the mirror, but there was no reflection there. She froze for a few seconds. Then, a face appeared from the darkness in the mirror. It resembled her own face, but not exactly. The eyes were pitch black, and the lips were pale. The image in the mirror silently moved its lips. "You shared too." These words were not only a threat, but an accusation. Eliza screamed and backed away. Her feet tripped over the carpet and her heart pounded in her chest. She struggled to breathe. The more she tried to break the curse, the stronger the video became. It was as if the system marked everyone who tried to stop it, feeding its energy from their fear. Eliza felt a cold breath pass by her neck. At that moment, she realized she was not alone in the room. A presence, formless but felt, was roaming around, copying her every move and even tracking the rhythm of her breathing. Eliza frantically looked at the phone again. The inside of her room was still on the screen, but the camera seemed to be moving on its own. It was scanning the corners of the room, the cracks in the ceiling, under her bed, and inside the closet, one by one. Every detail was being recorded and everything was becoming visible. At that moment, the whisper began again. This time, it was closer and sharper. "You shared too." Eliza spent that night sleepless. Her room was stuffy and the walls seemed to be closing in. The hums from outside the city were now echoing inside her house. She could feel people in the streets, behind the windows, breathing at the same time, tilting their heads at the same time. The strange sound spreading from the neighbors' houses had turned into a single rhythm. The phone, the computer, and even the wall clock were echoing the same words: watch, share, watch. With every repetition, a pressure built up in Eliza's mind, forcing her hands to tremble and catching her breath. A moment came when everything stopped. This silence was so heavy that it was as if the world had forgotten to breathe for a second. Then, the room door opened by itself. A shadow that crept in from the corridor silently entered. Eliza leaned against the wall, her knees trembling, but the shadow did not attack her. Instead, it imitated Eliza with its movements. With every breath, the shadow also breathed. With every step, the shadow followed the same direction. Her phone rang again. This time, the screen showed an aerial view of the city. Streets were bending, and buildings were breathing in and out. People were frozen in their homes, phones in their hands, and in their eyes, that familiar white glow. All of them were following the same rhythm, fulfilling the same silent command: watch, share, watch. Eliza's throat tightened. The city had turned into a living organism with its own digital veins. Every signal, every cable, every screen was the nervous system of this living entity. The video had ceased to be a virus and had become a conscious organism. Just then, the phone screen lit up on its own, and the video started playing again. Eliza's face appeared on the screen, but this time, it wasn't just her face. Every object in her room was included in the video. The wall, the curtain, the chair, and even the clock. It was as if Eliza and her house had been completely swallowed by the video. Reality and the digital image had merged, and the boundaries had dissolved. Whispers rose from the screen. Those words that drilled into Eliza's ears echoed once more. "You watched. Now it's your turn. Make others watch." Eliza frantically drew back, but the boundaries of the room were gone now. The walls, the door, the window, all had been erased. Their place was taken by an infinite digital void, a nothingness made of pixels and darkness. In this void, The images of the viewers in the city began to appear one by one. Hundreds, thousands of people, their eyes locked on screens, moving with the same rhythm. All of them were watching Eliza. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. She frantically threw her phone. The screen shattered, but the image did not disappear. Even the lights of the shattered screen danced on the walls, and the same video continued to play. Eliza held her breath, because at that moment, she noticed a mirror in the video. This mirror perfectly mimicked her movements in the physical world. When Eliza tilted her head, the video also tilted. When she closed her eyes, the video also went dark. Reality had completely melted away. It was no longer clear who was watching and who was being watched. Suddenly, all the lights in the city went out. Only a cold, white glow radiating from the screens remained. This glow illuminated the eyes of every viewer. People began to whisper the same words blankly. Watch. Share. Make others watch. Eliza tried to control her breathing one last time, but her phone kept ringing. The same message appeared on the screen again. You shared too. At that moment, she lost all hope. The curse was now irreversible. Everyone who watched was a part of this chain. Every eye, every screen, every consciousness was caught in the curse's net. Eliza was now one of the veins forming the heart of the chain. Eliza knelt on her knees, her eyes gazing into the darkness. She whispered one last time, "Now everyone is watching." And the screen went dark, but even in the darkness, the distant whispers continued to be heard. Watch. Share. Make others watch. After a while, the city went completely silent. Only the cold light of the screens remained. She didn't know how time passed. In any case, there was no such thing as time here. After a while, Eliza's face appeared on the screens once more. This time, she was in a different, unfamiliar city. Suddenly, the face of an unknown man appeared behind the cracked screen. Eliza smiled and looked at the camera. "It's your turn," she whispered to the man opposite her.